orderly and keepeth the law.
So what was the point of taking this oath? To prove what? That you yourself walk orderly and keep the law.
Right.
That was the whole point of the oath. Did Paul enter into the oath? Read.
As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing.
He said, concerning the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded they observe no such things. What no such things? All the laws of the Old Testament. This is what we told them they have to do. Go ahead and read.
Save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, and from blood, and from strangle, and from fornication.
Now, think about this, people. Because I've heard people say this is the only thing the Gentiles had to do. If this is the only thing the Gentiles had to do, what about love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul? So Gentiles they have to do this. What about love your neighbor as yourself? That ain't in here. Gentiles they have to do this? No. This is what we wrote the new converts who were Gentiles to start off doing. If you go back and read Acts 15, this was a topic again about the circumcision. And the disciples decided that we ain't got to drop the whole law on these Gentile converts because they going to hear the law when they enter into the synagogue every Sabbath. He said Moses is being preached in every city, in every synagogue. Yeah. So we ain't got to get these guys and start dropping the law on them. You don't supposed to do this, you don't supposed to do that. Let's just tell them about Jesus Christ, tell them about these 4 things, and they'll hear the rest when they come to Sabbath class. Because you had these Pharisees who wanted to drop the whole law on new converts the second they walk through the door. You got black Hebrews that have this same problem today. Say that somebody come into the faith, first thing they want to do is drop the whole 613 on you. And then tell you about Jesus Christ. No. Let's deal, they decided that these 4 things right here were key first. And they will hear the rest when they go to Sabbath class. But that ain't even my point. Read the next verse. Because Paul, there was a suggestion of James to enter into this oath, right? Did Paul enter into the oath? Because if you enter into the oath, that means that you walk up orderly and keep the law. And keep the law don't just mean observe it, it means not speaking against it too. Because that's a form of blasphemy. When you speak against God's law, you blaspheme. So keeping the law means observing it and teaching it. Go ahead and read.
Then Paul took the men, and the next day purified himself with them, entered into the temple to signify the accomplishment of the days of purification, until that an end offering should be offered for every one of them.
Did Paul enter into the vow? So what's the point of entering into the vow? This means that Paul said under oath that everybody who is telling people that I'm teaching against Old Testament law is lying. I swear under oath. That's what a vow is. Under oath, Paul said, I'm not teaching that. This is the same as Paul being on trial in America and somebody tells Paul, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And Paul say, I do. This is the equivalent of that. So when Christians say that Paul was teaching you ain't got to keep Old Testament law no more, they saying Paul was lying under oath. That's what they saying. Don't even realize it. But let me show y'all. Paul's troubles went over. The man entered the vow to prove his innocence, right? Read the next verse and watch what happens. Soon the man come out of the door and temple. Go ahead and read.
And when the 7 days were almost ended, the Jews which were of Asia, when they saw him in the temple, stirred up all the people and laid hands on him.
See, it's the Jews, the enemies of him, right? Stirred up the people. What are they trying to do to Paul? Go ahead and read.
Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man that teacheth all men everywhere against the people and the law. And in this place, and further brought Greeks also into the temple, and have polluted this holy place.
You saw they lying on Paul? This is the man of Israel, help. This is the man that teaches everybody everywhere against the people and the law. This is a lie they started on Paul, y'all. And Christians have sided with these people, and they saying the same thing about Paul. Sad. Real sad. The man swore under oath that he wasn't doing this. And even after he swore under oath and carried out the rituals of his oath or vow, soon as the man came out of the temple, there he is. They go the man that teach everybody we ain't got to keep law no more. That's the same man. And that's exactly what Christians doing. This is exactly what Christians doing. You so-called Christians are bearing false witness against against Paul. The man even entered into a vow. That man even took an oath to prove to you that he ain't doing this. And you're still lying on him nearly 2,000 years later. But keep reading. Watch what happened. Go ahead.
But they had seen before with him in the city of Trophimus and Ephesians, whom they supposed that Paul had brought into the temple.
So they lied and said Paul brought Gentiles into the temple. They lied on him about that, which is another point I'm going to show y'all. Whenever a Jew wanted to try to bring down one of the original disciples of Jesus, they'll accuse him of one or two things. Either breaking the law of God or speaking against the temple. Or saying he did something bad with the temple. Now how can any Christian honestly read this and tell me that they believe Paul was doing it when the man took an oath saying he didn't? And after he took the oath, the man still in the temple purifying himself. He comes out the temple, there he is. They're going to man teeth against the law. Christians, you guys are bearing false witness against Paul. Every last one of y'all need to repent. This is a shame. And it's right here in the New Testament. We ain't going to nobody's writings but Paul, y'all, to back this up. That's all we're going to. I'm going to take y'all to a few other scriptures to show you where he got some stuff from. But other than that, all this is Paul. I ain't going to James. I ain't going to none of the 4 Gospels. I ain't going nowhere but Paul. This is an all Paul lesson. All Paul. But keep reading.
And all the city was moved, and the people ran together, and they took Paul and drew him out of the temple, and forthwith the doors were shut.
Now why did they do this? Because these folks lied on Paul. They stirred up the people. Paul was in the end of taking the oath, proving that he ain't doing that. Apparently it didn't do any good, did it? Not for the enemies, it did good for the people who believed in Jesus Christ, but the other people who didn't believe, soon as the man come out the temple, they're going to lie again. There was a rumor started about Paul, people. Paul was not doing this. Paul was not teaching people against the law. Paul was telling people to keep the law. That's why James said if you enter into this oath, you're going to prove to the people that you walk orderly and that you keep the law. And if James is the one that suggested that Paul do that, that means that James kept the law. And if James kept the law, that means that Peter, John, Andrew, and all the other of them kept the law. This is after Jesus died on the cross. People, put 2 and 2 together. Why would James even suggest this if the apostles' doctrine, you know y'all have the Christian apostles' doctrine. If the apostles' doctrine was, you ain't got to keep the law no more, why would James have him do this? Don't say because he wanted to appease the Jews. No, you don't appease the Jews and lie about Jesus. If Jesus told Paul that you don't got to keep the law no more, and that's what Paul was supposed to teach, Paul ain't going to enter into no lie to try to no oath to try to make people believe he was doing something that he wasn't. That would have been deceitful. If Paul would have took this oath knowing that he didn't keep the law, that would have made Paul be deceitful. If James would have suggested that Paul enter into this oath knowing that the apostles' doctrine is we ain't got to keep the law no more, that would have been deceitful. No matter how you slice it, it would have been deceitful. So the only avenue of truth is all of these apostles were still keeping Old Testament law, and they were lying on Paul, and to prove him innocent, the man entered into an oath. And even at the end of his ritual, they still were lying on. There go that man that teaches everybody everywhere. But you know what? Christians do that all the time, don't they? Millions upon millions of Christians are lying on Paul today. But it gets even thicker, right? Let's go over to Acts chapter. Let's go to Acts chapter 22. Let me show you something else. 22 and verse 30. Paul is on trial yet again. This was not an official trial, what we just read about in Acts 21, but the man still had to take an oath and convince people, so you could say that was kind of like an unofficial trial. This is an official trial. Paul is standing before the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin was a council of Jews or Hebrews, and they judged you after the law of Moses, and also after their man-made traditions. There was mostly Pharisees on the Sanhedrin, right? 22 and 30. We seen what the Jews were accusing Paul of, right? They was accusing him of what? Preaching against Old Testament law, right? So now they don't snag them up. Now they got them in front of a Jewish trial. Surely, if Paul was preaching against Jewish law and everybody seen him and heard him do it, then when he went to trial, that's it. That's it for Paul. We got him, right? 22 and 30. Go ahead and read.
On the morrow, because he would have known the certainty whereof he was accused of the Jews, he loosed him from his bands and commanded the chief priests and all their council to appear, and brought Paul down and set him before them.
So now, they got all the chief priests. Y'all know these are Levites, descendants of Aaron. So you know they big on the law, right? You know they know the law. He said, and all their council, their word translated council, is from the Greek Sanhedrin. There was a Jewish council. It's historical. You can read about it, right? To appear and brought Paul down and set him before them. So keep this in mind. I'm trying to set the background for y'all. Paul is on trial right now before his own blood people. You know what I'm saying? Other Hebrew Israelites. And they're about to examine him according to the law of Moses to see if he's guilty. If he was teaching against it, or breaking it, and he's in public, because remember we read in his conversion, it said Paul was going to bear Jesus' name before kings, the Gentiles, and the children of Israel, meaning everything Paul was doing was public. Right? Everything he was doing was public. So now you got him. Let's put him on trial. Go ahead and read 23. Going in 23. Go ahead.
Paul, earnestly beholding the councils,
beholding the Sanhedrin, go ahead, the Jewish council, go ahead,
said, Men and brethren, I have lived in all good conscience before God until this day.
Now wait a minute. If Paul is talking to Hebrew Israelites when he says that I have lived in good conscience before God, then you have to understand that he means good according to how they perceive good. How did the Hebrew Israelite perceive good? Well, if you're keeping the law, good. If you're not evil. So if Paul is talking to them and he makes the statement, hey, I ain't did nothing. What he said was, I haven't done anything wrong. And you know they're judging him after Hebrew law, because this is a Hebrew council. Then he's telling them, I have not broken any Old Testament law. That's what he's telling them. But keep reading. Watch what happens.
And the high priest Ananias commanded them that stood by him to smite him on the mouth.
So he commanded him, hit him in the mouth. Just because Paul said, I ain't done nothing wrong. Right? But go ahead and read.
Then said Paul unto him, God shall smite thee, thou whited wall.
He said, God gonna smite you, you whited wall. You know, Jesus spoke of the Pharisees, you know, being white on the outside and filthy on the inside. Go ahead and read.
For sittest thou to judge me after the law, and commandest me to be smitten contrary to the law.
Look what he said. Then said Paul to him, God shall smite thee, thy whited wall, for sittest thou to judge me after the law. So we see what he being judged after, right? According to what? The law. He said, and commanded me to be smitten contrary to the law. Paul asked him, how you going to judge me after the law, but you breaking the law by telling this man to hit me? Because I ain't even been found guilty yet, and already you tell somebody to hit me. Go ahead and read.
And they that stood by said, revileth thou God high priest?
So they asked him, are you disrespecting God's high priest? You know, they asking Paul, and watch what Paul said.
Then said Paul, I wist not, brethren, that he was the high priest.
Paul said, I did not know he was the high priest. Go ahead and read.
For it is written, thou shalt not speak evil of the ruler of thy people.
Wait a minute, he's quoting Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, the law says you don't supposed to disrespect the rulers of the people.
Right.
The people who are in authority. Paul said, I wouldn't disrespect him if I knew he was the high priest, because the law said I'm supposed to do that. Sounds like to me, Paul is invoking Old Testament law to show that he's keeping the law. But remember, they're judging him after the law. Go ahead and read.
But when Paul perceived that the one part was Sadducees and the other part was Pharisees.
But see, when he knew that half of them was Pharisees and half of them was Sadducees, he hatched a plan to save his skin. He used the old divide and conquer routine. But watch what he says. Go ahead.
He cried out in the council, Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee.
Now he said, I'm a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Now he's going to tell you, this is why I'm really on trial. It ain't got nothing to do with me breaking Old Testament law. This is why I'm really on trial. Go ahead and read.
Of the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am called in question.
This is why I'm on trial. Because I'm preaching the resurrection of the dead. I'm preaching Jesus and the resurrection. And I'm going to show you that every time Paul got put on trial, they accused him of breaking Old Testament law, and he was found innocent every time. And he always told people, I'm really on trial because I'm preaching Jesus and the resurrection. They're going to be what you're going to hear all throughout this book over and over again. And keep in mind, we're standing in front of a Jewish council. I'm Paul's lawyer. My defense is, if Paul has done something wrong, then all of y'all Jews need to point out what he did and give him according to Jewish law. Go ahead and read.
And when he had so said, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the multitude was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, neither angel nor spirit, but the Pharisees confess both. And there arose a great cry, and the scribes that were of the Pharisees' part arose and strove, saying, we find no evil in this man.
Hold up, we find no what in this man?
No evil.
What would they judge him according to, though?
They would judge him according to the law.
To the law. They would judge him according to the law. They said, we find no evil in this man. How could they say this if Paul was breaking and teaching against Old Testament law? How could they say that? He is standing in front of a Jewish council. He is in a Jewish courtroom at this point. And everything Paul was saying was public. He was doing everything in public. How they call him in the temple. And they don't examine this man and say, you know what? We find no evil in this man. They looking at him. They looking at what he said, what he did, even how he was dressed. That means Paul had to be wearing his fringes. Because they were like, where your fringes at, bro? We know the Pharisees wore fringes because Jesus said they lengthened their fringes to be seen of men. So we know the Pharisees wore fringes. They got Paul on trial. If Paul wasn't wearing his fringes, we're like, but where your fringes at? The law said you're supposed to be wearing fringes. We find no evil in this man. And these people were strict law observers. So they didn't overlook anything. We dealing with the chief priest, the Levites. These people are real big on the law. They taught the law. And we dealing with the Pharisees, a strict law-keeping set. And they can't find nothing wrong with the law. With Paul as far as keeping the law. You got two of the strictest people when it comes to the law, and they say we find no evil in this man. This is after Jesus died on the cross. That means Paul was still keeping the law. That means he wasn't teaching against it either. Because remember, if you go back to chapter 22 and verse 30, it says, on the morrow, because he would have known the certainty whereof he was accused of the Jews. What were the Jews accusing Paul of? Teaching against the law and not keeping it himself. This is what he on trial for. So they had no evidence that he was breaking it or teaching against it. But yet, almost 2,000 years later, you got almost every Christian jumping up saying that's what he did. How can that be the case when his own contemporaries couldn't prove that against him? But yet you can? Well, his letters, we're going to read what the stuff he said in his letters. And Paul's letters were in circulation. You can read in the book what Paul told the people he wrote letters to copy them and send them to other churches. Surely, one of these people, they wanted Paul bad. I'm going to show y'all that. They wanted Paul dead with a passion. Surely, if one of Paul's letters could have been used against him to prove that he was teaching against law, somebody would have pulled it up as evidence against him. And they were in circulation. They were in wide circulation. But then again, if you could pull up a letter that says that Paul was teaching against the law, then Paul would have been a liar because he took an oath saying he didn't do that. You follow what I'm saying? So either way you go, either Paul is a liar, which means you don't supposed to listen to him anyway, right? Or Paul was telling the truth, and you better false witness against him. But we're going to keep it moving, right? Let's go to Acts chapter 24. Acts chapter 24. And all these events that you are reading about, people, are after Paul visited Thessalonica, Ephesians, Corinth, Galatia. You follow what I'm saying? All these are after that. What you're reading in Paul's letters were after he visited these places and left and then wrote letters back to them. You can't write letters to them until you meet them and establish a church. Right? These are the actual travels that you're reading about. Right? Acts 24 and 1. Once again, Paul is on what? Trial. Once again. That's why I titled this class, Putting Paul on Trial. Once again, he on trial. This time, under Felix. Go ahead and read.
And after 5 days, Ananias the high priest descended with the elders and with a certain orator named Tertullus, who informed the governor against Paul.
He informed the governor against Paul. And it's a high priest. So you know if it's a high priest, that's a Hebrew Israelite. And you know what they gripe with Paul is? He's teaching against the law. Right? Skip down to verse 4 and read.
Notwithstanding, that I be not further tedious unto thee, I pray thee that thou wouldest hear us of thy clemency a few words.
Now here go another lie. Another bearing false witness against Paul. Go ahead and read.
For we have found this man a pestilent fellow, and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world.
He said, a mover of sedition, that means rebellion. This man is saying that Paul was stirring up the Jews to rebel against the Roman government. Lying on Paul again. See, when they couldn't get him with Jewish law, they tried to hit him with Roman law. Okay, we can't get him for breaking Jewish law. We don't try that. The man is clean. Now let's get him on Roman law. Every time you turned around, Paul was on trial. Every time. And he beat every case he went to. Go ahead and read.
And a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes.
This is not he a ringleader. They say not only is he stirring up the people, he's a ringleader. This man is really trying to bring Paul down, ain't he? Go ahead and read.
Who also have gone about to profane the temple, whom we took and would have judged according to our law.
He said, who also went about to profane the temple. Then they go on that temple in there again. Then I tell you, they gonna get you on the law or on that temple. Right? They told them, we would have judged, who also have gone about to profane the temple, whom we took and would have judged according to our law. Right? That's what he's saying. We would have judged according to our law. But skip down to verse 9. Go ahead and read.
And the Jews also assented, saying that these things were so.
So now you got the Jews also agreeing with it. Like, yep, that's what he did. That's what Paul did. Everybody lying on Paul. The Christians have sided with Paul's enemies today. Go ahead and read. Watch what Paul saying in his own defense. Go ahead.
Then Paul, after that the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, For as much as I know that thou hast been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself.
He said, I'm happy to speak on my own behalf. I don't need nobody speaking on my behalf like Tertullus was speaking on behalf of the Jews or the Hebrews. So I speak on my own behalf. Go ahead.
Because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for the worship.
He said, it's been only 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. It's only 12 days, don't matter what happened.
And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogue nor in the city.
He said, they didn't find me in the temple arguing with any man, neither raising up the people to get them to rebel, neither in the synagogue nor in the city. I wasn't doing that nowhere. I wasn't trying to raise up nobody to rebel nowhere. This is what I'm doing. Go ahead.
Neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me.
Oh, what did Paul say? They can't do what?
Can't prove it.
Why couldn't they prove it? Because they were lying. So they can't prove the things they're accusing me of. And we know what the Jews were accusing Paul of. Doing what? Teaching against God's law or defiling the temple. He said, they can't prove that. Why could they prove it? He was doing everything in public. He said he was in the temple when they snatched him up.
Right.
But go ahead and read. Watch what Paul said.
But this I confess unto thee.
This I confess unto you. This is what I'm doing. Go ahead.
That after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers.
He said, I worship the God of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, doing what?
Believe in all things which are written in the law and in the prophets.
Wait a minute. Believe in all things that are written where?
Law and in the prophets.
Paul said, this is how I worship. I believe all things that are written in the law and the prophets. This is what my worship is based off of. Didn't he say that? He said, the way which they call heresy, so worship I, the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and the prophets. Paul is telling you right now on trial that this is how I worship. I worship according to what's written in the law and in the prophets. How could he say he worshiped according to what's written in the law and in the prophets if the Christians are telling you that Paul said we ain't got to keep the law no more?
Right.
Paul said this is how I worship. He's telling you this is how I worship. The man took an oath to prove that's how he worshiped. The man got put on trial and he showed the people this is how I worship. He got put into a Jewish court with two of the strictest law-keeping sects in the Jewish nation and was found innocent. You trying to tell me this man wasn't keeping the law? You trying to tell me this man wasn't teaching the law? How could he do all of this if he was doing what the Christian community say he was doing? Somebody would have showed up and said, I got one of this man's letters right here. And in Romans chapter 5, he said this. You know there wasn't no chapter to this back then. Y'all understand what I'm saying? In this letter to the Romans, he said this. In this letter to the Galatians, he said this. You know what they would do back in the day? If you wrote something and you claimed that, that's not what you meant, then they would ask you yourself, okay, tell us, what did you mean? And that's what they asking Paul right here. What are you doing? Paul said, this is how I worship. I worship according to what's written in the law and in the prophets. Now, ask a Christian today, how do they worship? Do you worship according to what's written in the law and in the prophets? They're going to say, no, we ain't got to keep that Old Testament law no more. Well, who told you that? Paul. Paul just said this is what he do. And I'm going to show y'all later on that Paul said out his own mouth that what I teach is how I live. What I teach is how I live. We take a look at how he lived. If he lived keeping the law and all the other stuff, that means it had to be what he teach. Otherwise he was lying. In other words, what I teach agrees with how I live. We're going to show you that he said that. But now, let's keep it moving, right? Y'all all heard him say he works according to the law and the prophets, right? That was written to that, right? Let's go over to chapter 25. Pick it up at verse 1. Because once again, Paul is on what?
Trial.
And why I call this class putting Paul on trial. That's what we're doing. I'm Paul's lawyer. According to what I have shown y'all so far, have anybody been able to convict Paul of teaching or breaking the law of Moses? No. This is all we got. This is the evidence that we got. We got to use what we got. And we're going to look at this level. I want to show y'all how the man lived. And what people are accusing him of. Every time you turn around, some Jay, there go that man that teach against the law. But we just read that was a lie, didn't we? So, if the lie was Paul is teaching against the law, then what does that mean that 98% of Christians are doing now? Lying. They lying to you. They lying on Paul. All y'all together against Paul. Y'all gonna all meet your destruction. Because people say if you twist a man's writings, you twist them to your own destruction. 98% of Christianity will be going to hell. I can say that. If they don't change, if they don't get away from this now, I'm trying to get y'all away from that. 25:1. Go ahead and read.
Now when Festus was coming to the province...
Now this is the guy that started ruling after Felix. See, Felix put Paul in jail for 2 years. And Paul was still in jail when this man came on the scene. The only reason why Felix kept him for 2 years is he was trying to please the Jews. Now here goes Festus. Go ahead and read.
After 3 days, he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him.
See, there we go again. They speaking against Paul again, right? Go ahead and read.
And desired favor against him that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea and that he himself would depart shortly thither.
See, they wanted Festus to send Paul to Jerusalem so they could kill him. But Festus said, no, I'm going to keep him in Caesarea. And this is what he's going to tell them. Go ahead.
Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man, that there be any wickedness in him.
So he said, instead of me bringing him to Jerusalem, let some of y'all, whoever is able to, come to Caesarea and accuse this man and let's see if there any wickedness in him. So he's giving the Jews an opportunity to get Paul. And remember, what were the Jews always trying to accuse Paul of? Breaking the law, or preaching against it, or defiling the temple. Those are the only thing they could ever try to get Paul on. Right? Go ahead and read.
And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down into Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought.
So now Paul is on trial again. Go ahead and read.
And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, but they could not prove.
Why couldn't they prove it?
Because they lied.
Because they were lying. And we see what their complaint was, this man is teaching against the law of Moses. Why couldn't they prove it? Paul had letters circulating at that time. Why couldn't they prove it? You had Jews living among the Gentiles that Paul was preaching to. Everybody knew what was going on. Why couldn't they prove it? Why didn't somebody produce one of his letters? Even them back then knew that they couldn't use Paul's letters against him, or they would have used it. They couldn't get them. They said they couldn't prove it. Many grievous complaints which they couldn't prove. We know what the complaints are. Teaching against the law of Moses, breaking the law of Moses, defiling or disrespecting the temple. Those are all their complaints. Go ahead and read. Let's see what Paul's going to say. Go ahead.
Why he answered for himself.
Speaking on his own behalf. He is our own lawyer, and I'm his lawyer for